It took at least 7 weeks. I muted. Fair.
Okay, going to call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. We need to do roll call. Should I do that? If that's something you want to do, or how does it work? Is that?
I can do it right now. Angela? Angela?
Oh, I thought you said Angela. I'm like, no, we're going to stop it too. We're going to start it off. Yes, I'm here.
Lisa Caltivano?
Here.
Matthew Johnson?
Here.
Dan Grisco?
Here.
Shannon Strasser?
Here. Okay, so very light agenda, but very intense agenda. So do we have a motion to approve the agenda? I'm gonna have to read it. I make a motion to approve the agenda. Second. All in favor? Okay, let's jump in. Comprehensive plan discussions and activity. What's their name?
Okay, well, thanks for this opportunity to discuss the comprehensive plan. We've forwarded some slides. Javier has it on the screen. Also have them as a handout. So the proposal to do today is to really discuss the process of how we're going to go about this comprehensive plan. I know that the planning commission has already started going chapter by chapter. And that is kind of been on pause while you've been doing other business in parallel, so on and so forth. So just propose to start going through the slides that I prepared and also look at these potential timelines. You see here in this handout, there's 3 different timelines. And once we go through the presentation, I hope it'll become apparent that there's some choices to be made about how detailed we go in the update and how often we have discussions and meetings. Because there's 3 options, A, B, and C. Just kind of telling secrets right now. If we go with option A, we probably will not be done by the end of the year. Option B, we kind of squeeze it in before the end of the year. And option C, we might have a little bit of buffer. So this is just to kind of preempt your thoughts and considerations as we talk today.
And how long does it have you for?
Well, right now I'm just going to be here this summer. You can see the top long yellow line here until about the end of August. But I'm just in Charlottesville, so I'd be happy to continue on here and there as you need me
Yeah, I guess I'm confused to that, see the color down here, see that's different.
Yeah, just to also kind of share, at the very top is kind of the common timeline elements in the legend. So we have the sequence of planning commission meetings, then we have the sequence of town council meetings. Then we have potential work sessions or joint work sessions. Then we have some community engagement events that are coming up that we could participate in if wise. And then my time is there, this long yellow band until the end of August. And then below the gray bar, you can see option A. And then the next page, has that gray bar option B. And the next page, option C. So some of the elements are the same, and then towards the end, the options become much different. In terms of how long the process takes.
And so the yellow down here is not you?
Well, it could be, but this would take a much longer into the next year. You can see option A. But towards the tail end of the process, it's mainly the public meeting and for the planning commission and the town council. That does take some time to public notice also for. So hopefully, the idea is we have most of the public engagement during the summer. And we factor in everyone's comments as much as possible. So the process towards the end, we hopefully have all the comments already as much as we could. So that would be more straightforward in theory. So that's just a brief overview of what this in front of you, and I suggest we can proceed with the slides. We'll go back and forth. However we want it. So basically, this information I've just kind of prepared to put something on paper. Of course, it's all open for your feedback and guidance, of course. So starting with slide number 2 would be the proposed discussion items today. Item 1 would be define the scope of the comprehensive plan process. And basically what I've done, I've taken the proposal from the Berkeley group that you all have here in the handout. And I've used their same structure that they've created, which is quite comprehensive and common sense. Kind of compare their proposal versus what we might want to do ourselves. And then we can talk a little bit about the budget they proposed versus the capabilities and the budget we have here. So we can strike a balance. So
Pass it around.
yeah.
Yeah.
You do a GoFundMe.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Well, but I think that's a good point, so like, the town has a limited budget, so let's just, be smart about how we put this and just understand. We're a town of 550 people, our tax base is a meal tax and cigarette tax and banks, so let's be reasonable on how we're gonna do this, we can't. And you're gonna help us find a bit.
hopefully. And we have a lot of great ideas. I've heard over the last couple of months. I've been in town since last October, November. So I think we can kind of crystallize a lot of those key ideas and put them into the document as simply as possible and make it an efficient process. Okay, so you can see here on slide number 3 the structure of the Berkeley Group letter. So there's basically the following sections A through E. So that's how I prepared the slides that follow. And again, this is the process I proposed just to kind of compare the Berkeley Group information versus what we might be able to achieve ourselves.
And can I just ask a little bit, I know I've heard the number before, but it's quickly me, how much are they proposing this will cost?
$60,000. Almost $70,000. Okay. Javier, if we could go to slide number 4, if that's okay.
Yes, sir.
Maybe that's something that maybe something.
Okay, so starting off with section A, project initiation and implementation. They propose a kickoff meeting. So what I would suggest is today is a kickoff meeting that we're going to have. But keeping in mind, a planning commission is one aspect of this bigger equation that the town council is also extremely important in the final approval. So, Mr. Goodscoe, I really appreciate throughout the meeting, it'd be great if you could add in your sense of how the town council might want to contribute in different ways through the timeline. Whether it be joint sessions, or we can have individualized discussions, one or two persons, whatever need be, so on and so forth, or more work sessions like this. So that's just one consideration as we go. And even if we have a kickoff meeting here, would the town council want to have their own kickoff meeting, or would it be appropriate to have a joint kickoff meeting? That's just one thought. Yeah. Moving on to number 2, document review. I've already started reviewing all the relevant documents, but what I'm proposing is to create a OneDrive through the town's Microsoft system, so we can put in different documents, key documents, and even have a working Word document of the comp plan. So let's say you're sitting at home on a Friday night, nothing to do, you have an idea. Go in and start editing, one paragraph. You have an idea when you're walking around town, you get home, you want to note it down in a notebook. So I think that could be one way of working together. And we meet periodically to kind of condense those ideas, and formalize them, and then we keep moving. So that's how we can leverage technology to create this reference library in the OneDrive. Moving on to number 3, existing conditions analysis. So the comp plan already has a lot of demographic information. We need to update that information in the last 5 years, and also putting the other new documents. For instance, the West Downtown Small Area Account is a new document since the comp plan. It's mentioned in there as a proposed document that it's needing to be done. It's already done now, so we have to update that in the document.
And this might just be a.
And even the smaller, they've got some hyperlinks to some other documents and other key documents, so you can definitely talk. Is it best to have an appendix, attachment, or because some people might have views that already this plan is not very digestible, but other people might have views that hey, it's best to get everything in the same document so everyone can get on the same page. So those are considerations I think would be really worthwhile talking about. So that's the first page, page number 4 of the proposal. If we can keep going, we can always stop. We can have questions or we can always be backwards.
Do we have a current list of the most recent studies that we've done?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do we have a current list of the most recent studies that we've done?
Small area plan and then like the market study.
Or like some of the research that we commissioned, so to speak.
Like what the
Our
capacity is for the water,
Just
water
having that one.
usage.
Like OneDrive idea, having all of those documents immediately accessible.
Because we're going to be referencing them throughout the course of this, so we have them all in place, so we know what we can pull from and decide if it is recent enough, or maybe something of a different scope, or something more recent.
So we do have a hard time with those big packets full of paper. I think it's much more digestible. So you have an accessible there.
Let me ask you this question, and I throw this before my fellow commissioners. So it's no secret that the town has been through a time where we've been fractured. There's very polarized a bit on opinions. And what I was going to say is when we go through the comprehensive plan, it might be helpful to identify parts of the plan where there's a lot of agreement and parts of the plan where there's like very different ideas. In other words, if we, for example, safety or parks or things like that, I'm just going to say there's probably a lot of uniform agreement in terms of how do we plan growth, what do we do with the factory, whatever. Probably lots of disagreement on that. So I guess I bring that to you to say it'd be interesting in our conversation trying to see like where the greatest consensus is. And it would seem, at least my thought would be, some of our more effective dialogue would be wherever the greatest consensus is, you know, on whatever the subject is. And then if we find out through community interaction or whatever, like the areas where there really is very different opinions, it's not that we shouldn't deal with them. It's just, you know, it's like if you're taking a tough question on the SAT, you answer the easy ones first,
Yes.
and then you come back to the tougher ones. And it may be that in the comp plan, you know, maybe 80% of the comp plan or 90, or the significant part of it is there's a lot of agreement. And then we find out where the disagreement is, because the other thing is you don't want to spend all your time in that area, because then you get nowhere. So anyways, it's just a thought. I throw that out to say, I'm more interested to say, where is the consensus? You know, how do we find consensus through the commission, through the council, especially coming where we've just been through.
I totally understand your comment. One method that can be used is a stoplight analysis. So a stoplight has different gradients, you know, green, red, or orange, or yellow. But we can even have a dark green for everyone agrees with this. Lighter green can be like most people agree with this. Yellow can be, you know, this is kind of in the middle. We really need to talk about this. So there's different ways that we can represent this concurrence. And where we need to focus versus areas that we don't need to focus on, we can just write it, and it's likely going to not have any significant growth. So that stoplight analysis is a way of, you know, kind of getting us consensus with areas of fraction.
And I can work with as staff to collect material for part 2 for document review and share that with Lincoln and see what's usable for the planning commission in the town.
So Mr. Wallace and I had a discussion regarding, for instance, capacity of the water treatment plant, these other considerations, so we can include that information as you like in this reference library. So I think it's all really relevant. As I understand, the water treatment plant has a lot of capacity, but we need to make sure that that's, you know, we're all on the same page.
It would also be nice to get a lot of this information out to the public too, because we, you know, I think a point of frustration for a lot of us is that we answer the questions repeatedly and it's still coming up as a matter of discussion and, you know, as if we haven't answered the questions. So I don't know, you know, maybe even having a place eventually on the website where we can post some of this, these pieces of information that we're collecting along the way, so that people might stop, you know, bringing it up. Right.
Just has relevant.
Yeah, or even like, you know, something that's smartly put together, you know, some charts and things that show the actual capacity of the town versus what people think it is.
Well, that's a great segue to slide number 5.
Oh, perfect.
I may.
I do that on purpose.
So the public engagement plan is really first place suggest focusing on the website. So great that the town is already building or rebuilding the website right now. So we could coordinate with the website projects and find out when they're going to be finalizing that and make sure they build out the right type of sizable pages that we need for comp plan, zoning, so on and so forth. So this could be a coordinated effort. And we could have different documents downloadable there, just like the current website, where we could see how it could be even smoother.
I don't think I've ever found a page that said, here's this document. I won't bring it up again.
Dan, do we know where the town is? Excuse me. Where the town is on that project?
On the website?
Yeah.
I don't know the most recent. I know we got a report, but I think the report, am I incorrect to say it's still in process?
Yeah, so we're moving forward. They've taken recommendations on the design. So I have to reach out to Morse, but we're heading forward with it. I think we'll have good timing with the comp plan to fold in comp plan material with our website. should be easy with Civic Plus.
It's been the Government Services Committee and Counselor Morris is spearheading that, and it's definitely moving forward, but it's still a process of trying to figure out.
Yeah. It's a little bit of back and forth and starting the website migration too. So getting all our old material onto that and then updating it.
Do we, should, it sounds like maybe we should speak to them sooner rather than later, like, about what we would like to see.
Well, and we should have a page probably for the planning commission, should there be a page for special activities, or should there be a page specifically for the comp plan, and then it just stays as it is for the next 5 years when nothing's in progress? I mean, how do we, who would be the ones that we should talk to about that, or do we have ideas we'd like to present to the services committee and how we think that should look?
I think we can.
Okay, starting from where we're at right now on the website, I'm just pulling up the website. It seems to me, from my memory, all the planning commission materials is under one page. So, depending on the structure of the website, for instance, I could have a discussion with Councilor Morse in the next meeting. Understand the situation, if they send the planning commission an email, then we could talk in the next opportunity about that. I could come up with an outline of what would be ideal for us, and we could talk at next planning commission meeting. It would be on the 5th of June.
Was there any discussion around, and this is just a quick segue. Has there been any discussion around having us all talk about what we think would make the website strong, or our ideas, or what would be helpful, or anything like that, or is it just gonna come through government service?
I think it's coming there, but I think they're open to input. I'm pretty sure that any of there would be, they're, again, I can't speak for them because I'm not on that committee, but I think they're open to it.
Especially if you want to provide input, I think they're trying to see what. They would welcome input on it being user friendly. So they have intentions on meeting with individuals who would probably be pretty vocal about that. Because the whole point is that's forward and outward facing
Yeah.
website.
Well, I think there's probably somebody that thought this website was very user friendly. I have a hard time finding stuff in there. But, okay, thank you, go.
And can you speak at all to, from the proposals that we've gotten for how we're building the website, how we're hosting it, services provided, how dynamic it will be in terms of our capability of changing things, building in new designs, building in new information and pages over time after the initial inception of the new.
I think the easiest answer to that is you're over my technical capability. I have technical children. I don't know all the details. I know there's different discussions, and even going back to the past, we had what we could afford some years ago. And I think that's the same dilemma we're going to have, is what can we afford, and then how easy will it be to be updated? I don't know. That's the trick, you know.
The key goal for me with this is that, like, sure, we may have an initial investment in getting this started, but we need to be able to have the tools that we need to maintain it and to add to it,
Sure.
build on it. And so over time, user friendliness is very important, but also administrator friendliness is also very important.
Yeah, the technical side of that. So I don't know.
I said on the back end, keeping a careful eye on that because. The easier it is to use for staff, the more staff time is saved. So as we do a little bit more training on staff time, I think from the beginning of the discussion, getting input from planning commission, from town council, and working with staff would help with whatever we want to develop with this website, including not only, you know, what we do for town council minutes, but also for the comprehensive plan.
Did you all ever get an intern?
We have a fellow.
Oh, right.
Yes, well, that was a little bit fancier name than the intern.
I like that.
What do you want me to be?
So I think that you're not gonna be the long term to maintain the website, I'm just saying.
No.
What software are they using to build the website? Anybody know?
Civic Plus,
So,
so kind of a leader in the industry.
Sounds like it's for government, small government organizations.
All government
Okay,
organizations, so
so,
from towns our size, we looked at the proposal. To, Charlottesville, I think uses Civic Plus,
well, it sounds promising.
but Louis,
So it sounds like the group would benefit from hearing from the Government Services Committee at some point, hopefully not too far in the future. Who do we talk to make that happen? Would be, should we?
Council Morse, I think, wouldn't she be the one on this issue?
yeah, because she's the subcommittee on the website.
So I don't know if it's in, if it makes sense to have them come in at our next meeting, but at some point in the summer, it sounds like that might be a good idea.
Let me field the idea.
Yeah,
Is it
ask them
available?
where they're at in the process, and because it might be so early in the process that they're just not, they haven't. Sounds like they're still working on the basic design.
No, I think we're a little bit further than what you guys are hearing, put it that way. So it's more, we're moving into the website migration,
content.
it's a package,
Mhm.
we paid. Yes, I think we've got an invoice and everything. It just takes a little bit longer, so it's migration is the big part, getting everything over.
Okay.
But there's still input on what you want, especially if we're gonna have future conversations about the comp plan webpage.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's not limited on the number of pages, there's probably multiple, so we can always add plan information after the fact if we didn't add it up front.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Any other questions about the website? Javier's writing that down, thank you.
Okay, still on page number 5, looking at number 2, community survey. Okay, so basically, the working groups suggested that there'll be a community survey done online by a survey monkey. And I would suggest that we do online, but also paper-based survey. There's not a lot of people might use internet or know how to use a survey monkey. So that's why I would propose a 2-pronged approach, paper-based and online. And then focus on wide distribution methods. I did see from the small area plan process that Thomas Jefferson District Commission did do some survey work. And they focused on the region, but also on the town. So that's why I was thinking at some upcoming community events such as 4th of July, there's probably going to be a large gathering of people from the region and the town. That could be one great place to hand out paper-based surveys, but also have QR codes if people want to do it on their smartphones. And send it out to the James Exchange and the new regional newspaper.
Bachelor.
So that's something to talk about when we dive into the timeline here. The Bateau Festival is scheduled for 21st of June, the Wednesday after Father's Day. So if we want to target that to be our first community event, we'll have to plan accordingly.
Yeah, I think it's worth thinking about the market, like you said, because it's every week and there are a lot of people that come there, so.
I think that's a good idea, the market is.
And I've always been open to having a table if we need kind of that engagement as well as, a handout. I'll go and sit and talk to people.
We could also set up, especially if we have the QR, we can drop off surveys in the local businesses, coffee shop.
Okay. So basically, my classmates and I, when we did a project for Scottsville last year, we finalized that in December. We had a draft list of questions. So at an upcoming planning commission meeting, I can revisit those questions. And we can talk about what the right questions to ask. We can finalize that survey. Okay, that's page number 5. Moving on to page number 6. Still on public engagement plan. Number 3 is public workshops. So basically, the Berkeley group proposed to conduct a public workshop to focus on gathering data and have graphics, materials, handouts, and exercises for the community to participate in. This will take a lot of time and preparation. And it's a question for the planning commission whether you want to focus on one larger public workshop or smaller engagements at the library or other public events. So that's just one question or thought that I had as we talk through the materials. And whatever the public engagement is, we of course document the key findings, including and or in appendix. So we definitely make sure that everyone feels heard in some ways, even though their ideas might not be directly adopted or might not be feasible for us. Okay, moving on, stakeholder listening sessions, as proposed by the Berkeley group. These are those smaller scale events, the festivals, the 4th of July, the library, office session, for instance. That we have a table, and it'd be a lot less preparation work, but it's more few commissioners or myself sitting there and talking to people and really having personal conversations. So these would be much quicker for us, and we can be more agile. But it's definitely up to the planning commission whether you want to have bigger events or smaller scale events for your consideration.
One of the things, Lincoln, I might say, coming back to these two, and coming back to the planning commissioners, somewhat to the surprise of me included, when we first started working on the park, which is, again, we're talking like 10 or 12 years ago, we had 50 or 60 people show up for, I'll just say, well, it might have been the largest happy meeting I've ever been a part of here. But it may be when we look at the public engagement, if we found where we thought there was the greatest consensus, it might be a good place to actually have a special meeting that, again, I'll say it's about the parks, or it's about safety, or it's about health, or whatever that we think where the greatest consensus is. That might get a big draw if we are specific, not that we couldn't deal with the other issues at that, but it's if it's segmented that, we're going to deal with this issue that we think is fairly popular. Just a suggestion.
I agree. I think I've been really kind of hoping that we would have events in the park. Just to kind of bring more people there. I think, music there at the park would be a great draw, and certainly a way that we could connect with the community, as well as have these sessions with them where we lend our time to have them feel heard. So it might be a way to kind of combine these things, but shared experiences, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Very, very important.
I totally agree.
For the public workshops, are we going to be hosting or running those ourselves, or would we be looking for like a impartial mediator?
Well, depending on the budget available, which is not much, I was thinking that myself plus the commission, we can pull it together.
Okay.
Or Ms. Morse is also an excellent facilitator.
Yeah, an impartial PhD type person, or we can find who lives in.
But I think it's important to have someone that's impartial, but also someone that knows Scottsville. So I think a combination of different people together. Transitioning to the next slide, which is what we're talking about, is some examples of an event that I organized on Eastern Shore, Virginia in January, together with some other academic colleagues. So these are photos of just low-hanging fruit. They're a very simple exercise. This was a map of the Eastern Shore on the left-hand side. This is the president of the community college there, putting a sticker where he works and where he lives. So this exercise is very simple. All you can do is print off a legible map of a certain size and have two different colors of dots. And then we can have an idea of who are we talking to? Are we talking only to people in the town, or are we talking to only people from Albemarle County, or vice versa? So we can find out who we're missing and who we're not listening to. That's important for the conversation. So for instance, we could sense that we're hearing only from Overland County residents from Scottsville, and not from Vermont. So we need to focus a little more on engagement of Vermont. One possibility. Moving on to the upper right hand corner, small text, we could have a questionnaire at the event. Rank your priorities for Scottsville. We could have several options on a poster board. One is parks. That's a crowd pleaser, right? Trails. But others could be a little bit more decisive. So, you know, we have to strategize what are these priorities to choose from, so forth. And what, most importantly, what would we learn from this prioritization? Something as housing would be important to put on this list, or would it be too decisive? And we wouldn't really get to the root of the problem. So that's just one thought. Just below that, in the middle, drawing on the map with prompts. What are your favorite areas of the town? Or is it difficult to walk? This could, you know, facilitate where we need to focus more improvements on sidewalks. And what places could be improved. So these are just very basic, but we can do a lot better than that. This is what we want to pursue. Then on the right hand side, you can see the photo there of flooding locations. This was just a simple map that used to show people put sticky notes wherever they experienced flooding. This was the low roads, you know, areas of flooding that the county didn't really know about. This is lived knowledge and local experience. And the lower image here, my colleague Luke just had a bunch of large maps, and people were just drawing, you know, areas that need to be focused on in the county, different roads that need to be paving, for instance.
Yeah, I love all of it.
So they're really, I guess we use the term engaging and fun. We got different colors of markers doing different things. And we take these back and we put them on the wall and analyze them and see, hey, we didn't realize that this area, people want to walk from point A to Z, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we need to focus a little more on sidewalks in this part of town rather than this part of town.
One
Those
of
are just rough ideas.
One of the things, just so I say this, I know this is a specific thing, but in the overall discussion, I'd really like to get back to at least one of the points of talking about how do we connect uptown and downtown, and there have been, it's kind of a mystical struggle, so to speak, you might say. It's a necessary thing, but it's not an easy thing. But if we look at it comprehensively, there are ways that we address that. So I just throw that out there to say that there's also some history that would be helpful to bring into the discussion, to say we tried these and it failed. Here's why we might want to do something. Here's what's going to happen with the new gas station that's coming in that adds something to it. Here's something that subtracts. But, or here's 3 different properties, mine would even be one of them, that we might want to come to a landowner and say, would you want to allow something to happen on your property or not? Or, you know, so just thinking creatively, whether we solve it or not, I think it's really, so anyway, that's just one of a long-standing problem that we need to think about. How do we address
I
it?
think it's been on our list to make to shore up the language around the sidewalks for new construction. Anything that, like the Exxon station, it would have been nice to have some sidewalks.
And another consideration is we could have a pamphlet put together before these events, kind of tying off these strategic initiatives that Councilor Morris is putting together. We have those, and then also have the planning commission's priorities or goals within that. One of them might be sidewalks, and we might have a bullet point or 2 talking about the history. Various ways we could do this, but the idea is we have some sort of brochure that'd be kind of a basis to start the discussion. We can hand it out to people, not so we're starting at, you know, position A. You know, we want to start with an elevated sense of knowledge. You know, people can read for a few minutes and they're fully informed. Then we can start the discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think starting the conversation too, people often will be shy about the scope. You know, what does this entail? I got a lot for you. You know, where can we start? So I think that's great.
Focus the discussion.
Yeah.
So again, slide number 7 is just some suggestions, but there's other options we could do that are quick and relatively straightforward. Moving on to slide number 8, comprehensive plan development. So first of all, the working group proposed joint work sessions. And I think these are very important because what we've heard is communications team between planning commission and also town council. So I think that the timing of these joint work sessions is also very important. So we can discuss that in the timelines. And we can also have other types of meetings. We can have work sessions like this. We can have one-on-one. Let's say someone is very excited about one paragraph or one page, then we can have a one-on-one discussion and talk about those details. And at the next meeting, we bring it back to the group.
Yeah.
And of course, we have the forum whenever we require. Moving on to number 2, draft plan elements. This is the bulk of the work. And Berkeley Group, proposal, even though it doesn't really state it, it basically proposes, redrafting the plan from scratch. So that's a whole lot of work. And I don't have that capacity, I think it's quite obvious. But if we're able to do strategic updates in a very efficient way, focusing on the big lands or turning points for Scottsville, I think we could achieve something quickly.
One thing that we talked about in our last meetings, a couple of meetings ago, was that it's huge. And there's a lot of goals and a lot of objectives, so minimizing it, being a little bit more direct about what we want and just cutting it down in size. So maybe not a total rewrite, but the way that it's laid out, the consensus was that it was a little broken, the way it was broken down, just needs a big rewrite.
I understand. Towards the end of this presentation, I proposed what we can tackle in the next meeting. And one of those things is looking at the structure. Whether we want to retain the same structure and just kind of truncate it, or we would retain the same structure and add appendix documents, like what was mentioned earlier. So there's various different options we can move forward with. Okay. So. Also, number 2, we're still here on page 8, talking about working in a Word document. So let's say you have an idea at night or early in the morning, and you want to make some notes in the Word document, you can do that. So it's working collaboratively and efficiently. And then another consideration involves maps. So understand that the Thomas Jefferson Planning District Commission helped us to prepare the maps previously. So I'm going to reach out to them soon and try to get those maps and see what support they can offer us in the future. Because there are some small updates we do need to make. And I've also heard from different people that the legibility of the maps in the content could be improved. So one option is, this is just one possibility is to have a tabloid sized comp plan. So then you can have your information on basically 2 pages and the maps could be larger. That's important. Or if you think most of the audience is just going to download the PDF, it doesn't really matter what size it is on your computer, you zoom in, zoom out. As long as the image is a PDF or it's vectographic, it's not pixelized, then it could be very legible. So that's really just a major conversation. I think right now we're just focusing on content and structure.
As far as the collaboration goes, is there any rule about having like meetings on Teams, since we have Outlook now, or on Zoom, so that I feel like we could be meeting together more frequently, wasn't always in person.
I think we could meet in different forums for special meetings, but we'd still have to have minutes if it's more than 2 of us, and
Yeah.
it still have to be recorded.
Because you're specifically meeting as planning commission and conducting business with regards to the town.
Unless
You
we
can record in Teams.
We have the Zoom suite, we have both.
I agree with your point. my job is turned more video, so to speak, and I appreciate that aspect of being able to do things. I don't know what the legality is. I guess there's a,
Are the localities actually, I mean, I look at this and I think we meet once a month. We maybe do a special meeting every once in a while. I think that we need to do more than that. I think, recording these messages is great because then that lends to the transparency. But if 3 of us can't meet at one time, good lord. I mean, once a month, this is why we haven't gotten a website yet, it's because decisions aren't made except for once. And I'd love to explore if there are other options.
yeah, the question, I guess I go back to
Yeah, I'd
the
I'd
legality
be
of it.
very careful about the legality with that, but I'm very open to trying to be as engaged with
I
town
will.
council members.
I
One
will.
possibility is splitting you guys into 2 and working with Lincoln. So pairs and then having some consensus, but also I would think probably for transparency. I would, and we have a quorum, I think maybe calling more meetings and special meetings, I think Lincoln. Maybe describe having some of those, even maybe input on the structure and what you guys want.
Yeah, because if we're gonna expedite this or get it done in a serious amount of time, we need to
And they
definitely have more meetings.
they could still be meetings, but I have to look into some of the remote questions with that. I will suggest that in person, I usually think is more engaging
Mhm.
than Zoom.
No, you're right, but I think as far as if we've gotten our plan set, and we need to check in. Maybe just to make sure that one of us does need help or we're on track and, I don't know.
Well, maybe, even if they are in person, maybe we could say, okay, from here on, like, through the summer, we're gonna meet at least twice. We're gonna have a special session and our regular working session. But the special sessions are gonna be very like, this is the agenda, we're only talking about this, we're gonna be in and out in an hour, like, I don't know, like, something to kind of. Put some boundaries on, how much time we're spending and. I don't know. Some of these meetings. End up being quite a time commitment. Maybe if we're gonna have a lot more special meetings, I would just like. And I agree, I think they're necessary. But I would wanna be a lot. Strict.
I think the body prioritizing the agenda and then providing Lewis and me with inputs of how to help ahead of the agenda.
Yeah.
Would be really useful to make those running quickly and efficiently.
Okay.
And then at the bottom of page 8, the last bullet is coordinating relevant agencies, so I'm gonna be doing this in parallel to our discussions as we go some different topics. Okay, transitioning to page 9, if that's okay. But this is really the review and adoption process, and it focuses a lot on Virginia's statutory requirements. So number 1 is public review and refinements. They were proposing holding a public open house to present the plan, and if we thought that there would be a large gathering that we could focus on, and maybe focus on these areas of agreement. This could be a great opportunity, but again, if we plan a large public engagement and not a lot of people show up, it can also be a deal breaker. So these are just thoughts. Yeah, and again, you can have smaller events, public meeting greets that you can go to people, and that might be just as effective. Moving on to number 2, refinement and final revisions. So these, are supposed to be happening at joint work sessions as we go. So hopefully, the refinements and final revisions will be quite minor at this stage. And then number 3 is that adoption of the deliverables, so that basically approval by the planning commission and reporting to the town council. So if everyone is generally on the same page, hopefully this will be a straightforward process. But if there are differences on opinions, that point is to driving the process on.
And so our process is that when we have our finished product, we send it to town council for final approval, right?
Yes, but even before that, I would suggest we have several joint sessions. So we can hear different opinions and rechart the path if need be. So generally, when we get to this late stage, everyone will be on the same page, hopefully. But we can go through that on the timeline, it becomes very evident. I think once everyone, including town council, see the different timeline options, we definitely have to be on the same page if we want to get done by this year. Slide number 10 is just showing these optional services by the Berkeley group. And I'd just like to highlight the cost of some of these. Additional public meeting was $2,500. Additional work session, $2,500. So, yeah. Yeah, inflation, yeah.
Well, that was over a year ago that they gave us that.
So I think if we got this accomplished ourselves within this year, I think it'd be quite an achievement. Moving on to page 11, these are just a few other things. Website development that's already being paid for by the town, luckily. And there's other consulting services they propose on the like renderings. I don't think we need specialized images. But we can pull photos from residents and also quicker sort of photos that illustrate the plan. Okay, so that's really looking at Berkeley group's proposal and kind of building upon what we can do together. The second section of the presentation is really looking at these process scenarios. You can see here on slide number 13 is the Berkeley group timeline. In the right-hand column, you can see some observations that I wrote down. The Berkeley group is going to take about 14 months. Right now, we only have 7 months. Second bullet is, a lot of time is spent on drafting, redrafting the document. We don't have that much time, so we might need to be a little bit more strategic. And the third bullet is really planning commission and town council. If you hire the Berkeley group or any consultant, you'd probably be more of an advisory role, a guidance role. You just kind of be looking at, say, hey, I have period here and I've come here. You wouldn't probably get to spend so much time going and writing into the text and making suggestions. But since we're working with less resources, we'll have to be more collaborative. Because if you see the details of the proposal, they have many people working on the project, so forward with that. Okay, so that's just kind of an idea of what timeline they would propose. Moving on to slide number 14, we compare the nuts and bolts. Their proposal was $65,000 plus or minus. And I think the most important aspect of that is they estimated 974 hours of staff time. So as you might suspect, there's an economy of scale. Once you've done a couple of these comp plans, you might be able to compare with other similar like towns. There might be a faster process for you. So maybe 974 hours might not be the actual hours they would need to do it. But it is a benchmark. And then during my internship / fellowship this summer, I have about 220 hours and already spent 20 hours getting up to speed. So I have about 200 hours left. So these are just the facts of the matter. We also have Javier is very excited to work together with us.
So could we get more time if we paid you $2,500?
Well, I'm open to helping whatever I can. But I know there are limitations here, but I'm willing to do whatever I can. Maybe there's some money left from town council into this fiscal year, and maybe some more next fiscal year, and we could add a little bit on that. But I suggest we could just start working and we could see how well it goes. So the next item, bullet point 3 on slide 14 is really the target of completion. So I remember from the joint work session that Councilor Morse was facilitating that the target was ended this year, November, December. So that's something to keep in mind. We can talk about that when we have our discussion in a few minutes. And yeah, once again, limited budget and capacity. We have to be quite strategic about it. Moving on to slide 15, if we may, did want to mention the roles of this process. You know, we do have the planning commission here. We have the town council. We have myself and Javier and others. Ms. Carter, for instance. And we also have potential volunteers. So we talked previously when I was working on the UVA team, we talked about maybe proposing an advisory council or some sort of group. So there's pluses and minuses to that. We have another group, another team to communicate with. Or if you have one or two really key people, you could co-opt them in some official way that's allowable, and they could help us on certain strategic areas, whether it be parks or housing or something else. So that's another idea. But again, maybe I would suggest not having a whole another team to coordinate with, because that'll just take more time and energy. Having maybe very targeted assistance could be worthwhile. And again, I'm just here to help out however I'm assisting you. But it's like today, I put things on paper to have a discussion. Maybe it's the wrong thing, but at least we can kind of chart the way differently and keep moving.
Lincoln, would it be beneficial or not beneficial if there were a couple town councilors who were motivated in certain areas?
In my opinion, that'd be excellent, because the more people on the same page.
Okay.
I really take ownership in a chapter. So let's say we're talking about parks, for instance, and we have 3 people from the different bodies really take ownership. They can advocate for it better than me or any of us can advocate.
Right, okay.
Yeah, so I would be very supportive of that, in my personal opinion. Just like I know Mr. Payne was talking about maintenance. You know, maintenance is a smaller consideration because we're talking about 20-year horizon. But maintenance, looking at it in 20 years in terms of costs and other purchasing power considerations, that also factors into this in a different way. So yes, I would suggest whoever wants to join in as much as possible. So at the bottom of 15, the work process and confirmations, you know, we've already talked about this a little bit, you know, what kind of decisions do we need to wait a whole other month? Do we have a formal meeting and another, you know, type of meeting? Let's say we have 2 person discussions, looking at very focused things. Like, let's say we want to look at the plan of the parks, and we just want to make sure that's most updated. Because I was at the library last week, and Mr. Heisen was there on computers, and I was chit chatting with him about parks, and he said he wanted to add 2 things to the park plan. So I was like, oh, that's great. We can have a focused discussion on the park plan in the future. So that might not have a formal meeting. We might have 2 people sit together. We sketch it on top of the existing plan. I go back and I update, and we have it ready for the next meeting, so we can make a decision ASAP, move forward. That's just one thought. You know, when do we have to have these formal meetings, and when we have informal 2-person Zooms?
So can we do any of this on email, like through email? That's all public record.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely communicate through email.
Right.
It might be a little cumbersome though, if it's, you know, depends on how often people check in their email. You know, I know I don't check it daily, so. But it is possible to communicate that way. I think if that's what we decide to do, we'll check in a little more often, you know, in anticipation of having something to collaborate with. So, yeah.
Okay, we may move on to slide number 16. Process scenarios. Okay, so I gave an overview of this earlier, but preparing for this meeting, I really thought about putting forward 3 different options. Each of them are possible and logical, but option A is really going chapter by chapter, having just monthly meetings. And I think this is how you started off, and it was taking a long time. Option B is kind of in between that, you know, targeted revisions, monthly meetings, and option C is really having meetings about every 2 weeks. So everyone's really on the same page, and we can make decisions quickly and not have to wait a whole other month in the next official meeting. And the regular scheduled meeting of that. Okay, so, basically, what I can suggest, we keep going through the last two slides, and then we come back to this, because it is very detailed, but I thought that these timelines are important to be detailed, so we can kind of understand the rhythm of the meetings and how important it is to plan. So, moving on to discussion of next steps. So I was thinking, number one, we really need to have an idea of the target completion date. When we finish discussing today, if that's possible, is the end of the year, really the targets. Because, you know, the comp plan is to be updated every 5 years, so the end of the year will be really the end of that 5 years. And, you know, the last Monday of the year is Christmas Day, so we actually have to finish before that. So then number two is the scope of the update. If we're kind of on the same page today, we want to do targeted revisions, maybe leaving the same structure, but shortening in some areas, moving some things to appendix documents. But I think maybe we can be on the same page. We're not going to redraft from scratch because we just don't have time. I think that's becoming a thing. Number three is, you know, really choosing which timeline we want to focus on, and maybe it's a combination of timelines, you know, A, B, C. And then the items to talk about at the next planning commission meeting on Monday, 5th June, it's in 2 weeks. And then lastly, I would suggest we really target these community events. A film festival, which I understand would be a lot of people coming from out of town. So we can really get tourists potentially. I've never been to the film festival, so please correct me if I'm wrong. The 4th of July would be a lot more local people here. A coffee hour would be something at the library, another public venue here, for instance, to really draw people for coffee. Who doesn't like coffee or tea?
When you were talking about 4th of July and you said, you know, a lot of local people here, you didn't mean like just local people, that's one of the biggest events where people come from all over the place. Yeah.
And it depends on what type of feedback we want. So let's say we have a booth down on the sidewalk in front of here. And 90% of people we get comments from are from Charlottesville or Richmond. Would that be what you're wanting, or would you want a mix of that with local feedback? You know?
I mean, it does depend on what we're asking, but I assume we're asking about what people here in town would like to see as far as a future plan for growth. And
when you're part of that, like survey monkey question, we did, are you local, are you non-local, and then we analyze the results of the rest of the same questions in the context of both, and then see how they run parallel to each other or don't.
yeah,
But I think I probably something with this.
I think so too. I think that's too. I don't know whether 4th of July is the best time, just because we have such a huge mix of people there. But I don't want to miss an opportunity.
I think the farmers market is an excellent suggestion also. So potentially, maybe we don't focus on 4th of July, we focus more on farmers market.
I think so. We could, I mean, what are our next steps for questions? Like, for you had said you were going to check in maybe with somebody about the appropriate questions, or we?
Well, during the UVA exercise, not in December, we already came up with a list of questions.
Oh, okay.
But you know, those are 6 months old. I think we need this is better based so I know, and you know, the latest happens around town. You know, back then, our kind is still you know, maybe in action. So what I could do is I could take a look at those questions and compare those and some other options for the June 5th meeting.
Mhm. And then after that, we could start targeting the markets.
Let me, oh, sorry.
I was, what are some other ways that we can connect with local folks? Because frankly, I don't really care what people from Charlottesville. Or, you know, and I'm not just saying Charlottesville, but like people that don't live here. Like if we're looking for our comp plan, I mean, unless we're talking about like the tourism section.
Sure.
then that's different, but.
But it's also the question of land use and growth.
Right.
And that involves more than just 150 people that live in this town. That's involved people that live in surrounding areas, so I'd be curious to, there's the.
You have to start on this.
Right.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for more, a way to reach more people that come into Scottsville and participate in Scottsville events and tourism and, you know, the local economy versus people that might be passing through from like Richmond or, you know, here from Massachusetts for a wedding or something like that, you know?
And we could target those people to let us know what about their communities. And then. Feel free.
Why are they here? Why do they
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
get in here? Why is the size? Because
Yeah.
those are valuable pieces of information for us still.
Yeah, that's.
One of the tourism, so to agree with you all on one point, but also to make a slightly different edge. So I think for sure, the majority of this comprehensive plan is, we want to focus on the people who are most vested in the Scottsville. I mean, no question about it, whether they live in the town or they're right next to the town. But there is value in hearing, like you just said, why are you here? Like, I know a lot of our businesses or restaurants draw from lots of different places. So it would be helpful if it was qualified, if we said, okay, and then this category are people who visit, and so we might weight them differently related to tourism or related to, like, why do they come this year or why do they come to the 4th of July? That's a different consideration than it is related to services in the town or development in the town, which is, it's not, again, I think it's helpful to qualify who it is we're
Yeah,
talking
well,
about.
and online we could do that more easily, because you can have branching questionnaires.
Exactly.
So if you live in the area, you get one set of questions. If you answer that you're from Massachusetts for a wedding, you get a different set of questions. But how do we do that?
Decision
Yeah,
tree,
that
yes, so, we can do that with a paper, it's a little more complex, but.
Yeah.
If we did it by paper, we could have it at a booth and we could guide people through it.
Choose your own adventure.
I think this is a really important discussion, yeah, this is excellent, there's basically 3 different types of stakeholders, there's the people living in the town, there's the tri-county region. Then there's further far, the people don't come very often. Charlottesville, Richmond, and Massachusetts. And we could call them tourists.
Yeah, we have a lot of people from Massachusetts, so that's.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the festival is gonna be a touristy activity, that's also one of the biggest activities we do every year. So you may wanna have a questionnaire designed more for tourism for that sort of event, if we have the time to organize such a.
We're just two separate like files of surveys. Are you visiting?
It's a good idea.
Are you visiting? Pick up this. Yes.
That's a great idea.
So, yeah, if you're visiting, or if you're visiting would be one, or the other would be if you live in town or you come to town periodically, frequently.
We do have a surprising number of people that just come to town and wander. I mean,
Yeah.
that
Like
is,
holidays for the PDI. I found they just like come to town, like grab a coffee, they wander around, and they get back to show. So,
yeah, there, it is.
I mean,
it
the
is-
looks great.
They're really great.
So one example, data set we might gain, with this one idea is, we might hear from all the locals that they really enjoy the parks and trails. But we don't hear that from the tourists, so maybe that's a visibility issue.
So, will we have a QR code and people can just do it on their phones, but since we can put that all over the piece.
So I can create a permanent QR code in my Adobe's software. And we can put that on flyers or on posters. And so forth.
And the target would be the survey, or would it be what would it be?
Well, one would be the survey, maybe another would be the brochure we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Just some basic information, what is it content? There's a lot of people might not be familiar with. And what is the timeline of content, what's the process, it's very bullet points, that just kind of lays out the basic information. What does the planning commission and the town council think of the priorities right now? There are some areas that you have other suggestions. We can work on the language to make it positive, but also, be open to the criticism. The negative comments in this one. So that's just some brief suggestions to get through today. That's slide number 18. That's the last slide. Maybe what I suggest we go back to the 3 different timeline options that we've guided you very quickly through A, B, C.
Also, I mean, the targeted completion date, we could play with that. So we've talked about that, and yes, it has to be every 5 years, but no one's going to come down on us if it's in 2024, so that could play into it.
Yeah, I totally understand. What I've always found in all the products that I've ever worked in, if you set it, I'm like, in a lot of ways, always seem to move back.
It's asked.
It's like,
At the end of the year, it's.
the manageable timeline.
And it would keep us motivated, but then we have that option. But.
We have, we don't want to consider that.
And we'll see if we can finish it before we grow a beard again.
3 days.
Right. Okay. Bad.
Okay,
5 inches long.
Alright.
starting off with.
This hurts my eyes, actually, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it hurts my eyes.
We can also put it on the TV monitor, but it's gonna be smaller.
But you're gonna make it really idiot proof for me, right?
Well, I have to say, this is really colorful and great, and I get the gist of that, but some of the stuff, the notations in here, I'm just not.
Yeah, let me guide you through
We're
it.
getting that.
Guys, I try to make it simple, but
It's
not too
not.
complex. It is a lot, yes.
Okay, so if this is your version of simple, then we know what we're in store for the next few months.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah.
Like a challenge.
Okay, so looking at page A. And looking at line A on the left side, this is project initiation and orientation. So A1 is kickoff meeting, that's basically today. Okay, so each planning commission meeting that we have here is in dark blue. So wherever you see dark blue, that's ideally a planning commission meeting. You can see on the timeline here, everything this summer until the end of August is by week. And then after that is final grade, not course agreed by month, September through December. Okay, so A2 is document review. I'll prepare this library and send it out by email, the link, and then you can contribute documents to it. Or email me, I can find the document and add it. A3 is existing conditions analysis. This is really looking at the first section of the comp plan and seeing what other information we need to have as a basis. Okay, B1 is webpage. So you can see here, my brainstorming was that we would talk about the webpage on 5th of June. And then you can see gray past that. That's when I think the website will still be being built for another month or more. So we need to factor that in. We might not have our website ready until July or later. Right? Pretty obvious that we might need to plan further than that. B2 is community survey. So if we talk about the community survey on June 5th, and everything's pretty straightforward, I can make some revisions. We might be able to roll that out sometime in June or in July. It just depends on whether you want to talk about this community survey with the town council before then. Because once we finalize this community survey and send out a link, we don't want to have a situation where we have other ideas and we might have to recreate the link or reprint the paper surveys. So that's another important decision. What can we go ahead with now prepared, or what do we want to wait until the next joint meeting with the town council? And one question I also had up at the top here was, how much notice does the town council need to have a joint session with the planning commission? Yeah. That I don't know. So that just depends on the rhythm of your
I
meetings.
mean, it's officially. I think it's officially what, 7, isn't it? 72. I mean, if you had an official notice, but in terms of actual planning,
Special
Yeah.
session, yeah, 3 days.
the one thing I will say in the past. The town council hasn't had as much involvement as this in the process, and I think. The town council being involved in the process is good, but I also think that the planning commission probably could drive it as much, I think. I think we can drive the car.
I see it that way, but I'm also seeing like that inclusion of town council participation more as a means of, once we get to the point where it's like, is this approved? All of us have been working on it and having eyes on it. at the same
Sure.
time. So approval,
Yes.
no time.
With.
Running asking it like, wait, but.
Yeah. Yeah, but would that have to be a joint session, or could it be? One or two people going to the town council meeting and saying, hey, this is where we're at so far, do you have any feedback for us before we go to the next step of the process? Because I'd rather do it that way than a joint meeting.
Or an email, right? Like, especially if we're sending out the questions that we're gonna have on our survey, like. Here's what we're doing, and here's the questions we put together. What is your feedback? Revise, send it back out.
But here's something too, then this is gonna sound like I'm throwing cold water on this, because it is a little bit. Is if we create the perfect document, let's just say that the town council and the planning commission, we've created the perfect document. In reality, that's all it is. The question is, have we built any momentum to do something about it? So in other words, there's two things you need to think about. I've been around, I think this might be the third one I've been around for. Again, it's a piece of paper that sits there. The question is, in the process, are we building momentum to actually do something? But that's a whole different thing. So that process of like you said, Chair, there's so many things, you can't do all of them, and like even if we create a document. So the question is, what momentum are we trying to build? Wouldn't you agree with that to some level?
I think I saw a spark when we had our last joint session. Where people were starting to talk amongst ourselves. The agenda was not flexible enough for that, but I think that. All of us talking together, we started to come together in understanding. And I think that even if it's just one joint session during the process, just to say, okay, we hit our projected midway points. You know, here's where we are we falling astray or whatever, because this is the big communication issue, is that we make decisions about things and town council's like, whoa, we're over here. And we're trying to move here, and that's where I think the concern is. So.
Well, there's no question that we have to have joint meetings, that makes sense. But at how many points in the process do we need to have them? Do we need to have a joint meeting saying, hey, these are the questions that we've come up with? Because you already presented the questions and we've already done some of that footwork. So do we have to go back to town council at this point and say, hey, what do you think of these questions? And what do you think of these outreach attempts? Or should we
get into the minutia about it?
So that's what we're talking about, presenting the question to them and presenting who we're going to be presenting the survey to.
Yeah,
So
so that's
do
why
we
I was saying, do we want an email
Yeah.
saying, here's the questions? Before we actually implement these plans, do you have any more feedback?
Okay, well, I was under the understanding that you were saying that we didn't need to do joint sessions. with
No,
town council.
I'm talking about that the first one on June 12th. Do we think we need to have that as a joint session, or can we just present those questions to them? So that we can get out. At what point do we think it makes sense?
June 19th.
Okay, so what's the color on June 12th? That's
That's
if we wanted to have a special.
That's
And
the town council work session.
Wouldn't it be June 20th? Isn't that like a holiday now, June 19th?
Yeah, so just that week. Yeah.
Okay,
Is it not able to put the actual color dot in it.
sorry.
Yeah.
Because,
That's just
Not,
not.
right.
not for staff,
What?
not for staff.
So the date here is every Monday, so typically every week is on Mondays, but sometimes I might have to move it to a Tuesday. And so forth.
So. So the question was, if we're going to come up with the questions in our meeting on June 5th. Bring that to town council to get their input. And then come back. And be prepared perhaps for the Bateau Festival, perhaps for the 4th of July, perhaps for the farmer's market. And who needs to review those questions, and do we have to present all of us before and have a joint session before town council with town council? Or should it just be a presentation of 2 of us, 1 of us?
Or another option would be, we finalize the questions on June 5th, and I could give a brief update during the work session on June 12th with the town council. And I wouldn't only talk about the questions themselves, I'd talk about the process, generally speaking, just as a briefing, if that makes sense. So maybe I suggest we're not focusing just on questions, it's building that momentum, on just keeping everyone updated. So that could be something we do on June 12th at the town council work session. And if everyone's generally on the same page, we technically, I don't think we need formal approval from the town's council, they can't even vote during the work session anyway. But we could just go ahead if.
Let them know what's going on.
Just let them know. And we just explain that, the focus is on people that come here. I think the term most frequently, or people from further far, yeah. We really strategize on those 2 different types of stakeholder. Of course, the local people that we refer to are the stronger stakeholder, we pay attention to what they want and what they live every day. But also we really want to pay attention to those tourist dollars and their needs too. So that's just a suggestion about how we could strategize, and it's great to hear from you that email could be a communication method for various strategic things, focus things.
So on the 5th, we're working on coming up with the questions for the community engagement sessions. The ones that are gonna happen at like the farmer's market and Baines, not the where we're sitting down with.
No, that's a
Community.
different type of
Okay,
different type of discussion, the whole other ball of wax. But what I can suggest is I can prepare some suggested questions
Okay.
based on this decision tree. And the 2 different types of stakeholder, and I can email those to you before our discussion on 5th of June. And maybe I suggest we can kind of agree on how many days in advance you need your information, and then I can work with that. But we have to be a little agile with as things get more heated with different events popping up soon.
thank you, William.
Sure.
Very helpful.
But I'm really glad to hear about the email possibility, communicating with council, and then me giving the updates during the work session. Of course, Councilor Briscoe is giving updates also.
One of the things I might do, I'm sorry to say it this way, I have some very tricky logistics on June 5th. I might see if Councilor Morse could be here in my stead, but I will talk and see if that's okay, if I were to have somebody, if I couldn't be here. I think a town council should be
To
here.
report and to take back, sure.
Yeah, I think that would be advisable. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, let's look at option A, and again, all 3 options are pretty much similar in the very beginning. But the main difference here is how many of these public engagement things we have. The stakeholder listening sessions. So here you look at V4. This proposal would only have 2 of those, maybe at the library, maybe no longer focus live, maybe focus on the farmers market. And that's really because you're gonna be spending so much more time drawn out, you're not gonna have a lot of focus time. So you're drawing out your resources longer. And then this is the chapter by chapter option, so you can see here under C. 2A. You can see here chapters 1 and 2, vision and goal setting. We'll be discussing that first couple weeks. Then chapter 4 is background information. Then chapter 5 and chapter 6, and then last, I would propose chapter 3 is implementation plan. That's because I noticed in the comp plan, implementation plan is towards the front of the comp plan, it's chapter 3 and not towards the end. But I would suggest we focus on implementation plan last, because that's really forward looking. We have to get kind of everything else done as a basis. So that's one thing I noticed in terms of sequencing that I might want to consider. Okay, and then D is maps. So these I'll be working on gradually throughout the process. As we talk about, for instance, the park plan, I would update the park plan. And we talk about different things about walkability, I would bring walkability plan about where our sidewalks are and where neighbors. So on and so forth. Okay, and then looking at section D here, a public review and refinement. If we choose this option, then it'll be sometime next year. Moving on to option B. This is kind of in between. Again, it's pretty similar in the first couple of weeks. Here we have maybe more resources to have smaller scale events. So you can see B4, we have Plateau Festival, library, 4th of July, and we can do a farmer's market. And then you can see the real drafting starts under CA, vision and goal setting. I call this the Morse process. So we're basically building upon what Eileen has already been doing. We of course need to coordinate with her on when is she going to complete that process, what can we dovetail with it? Because what I'm hearing today is we can simplify the goals and so on and so forth. That's in the comp plan. But how does that relate to what Eileen is working on right now with the stakeholders?
I know, the other thing I know of, she specifically brought up in the last meeting, make sure that what this does works with that. So, yeah, so how that works together, I'm not sure, but the idea of them working together, yes, is definitely important.
So I think it seems like if Ms. Morse could join us on 5th of June, whether you're available or not, Mr. Briscoe, that would be opportunistic.
Yeah.
Because she's going to be dealing with the website and also the Morse process. Yeah. So this option B is less chapter by chapter and more we edit the document together. I would basically go into the Word file and make some quick edits and move some things around based on your guidance. So everything would be hopefully pretty much there. You would go in and say, hey, this paragraph is outdated and need to update it, or delete this and not relevant anymore. But it would be a little bit less chapter by chapter. I think we found that previously was kind of concerned.
Right. Would we use track changes for that kind of thing, or?
Yes, but I think someone during this process has to hold the pen, because as you know, in a track change document, it becomes very cluttered. So someone like myself would have to go through and just kind of accept the things that are really straightforward, but leave the things that might need further discussion. So we could agree, we do the first section together, and we find out if this works well and how we can improve the process. Or if one of you wants to kind of hold the pen on the final revisions, then you can go through and kind of accept everything, or highlight areas that I need to rewrite and improve it in the final instant.
Oh, I know nothing about track.
Okay. It can be confusing, but also useful.
Yeah.
So this option, we just skip down to section D, talking about option D here. This really presents a sequence of potential, planning commission, public hearing and approval, transition to town council, and town council, public hearing and approval. And Javier and I were talking earlier today. This is kind of fastest it could be based on a 14-day notice, so on and so forth. This is the ideal situation if everyone's on the same page, not, we would stretch into the next year. Moving on to option C. Okay, again, everything's pretty much the same the first couple of weeks. We would have these stakeholder listening sessions. We also have the Morse process we dovetail with. We have pretty much the same writing process, a little bit more condensed. We have one additional joint work session that would kind of give us that additional half-month edge to finish a little bit faster, I think. And then we'd have that same planning commission and town council approval process. And this would leave us 1 month buffer at the end. Like, ideal situation. Yes. So if we, yeah, in case there's Monday, for instance, can't have an additional meeting or something, we get 2 weeks behind or potentially a month behind, and you might still be able to finish by before December. So I hope it's evident that these are different options. There could be a combination of these, or it could just be one, and we head from there. We kind of start on this, and we might have to adjust as we go.
So we're selecting from the 4 options here, other than timeline, 3 different timelines.
Yeah, 3 different timelines. So as you can see, the A section is pretty much the same. It's the same for all 3 options. The B section, the only variation is, whether you want to invest more time and effort in these smaller stakeholder listening sessions, and if you want to invest time and energy in this larger public workshop. Is the larger public workshop, we would really have to prepare a lot of documents, visuals, PowerPoint presentation, exercise. And we basically have to get together before that and practice how we're going to explain this in a logical order to the public. It's just not going to be us showing up and start talking. We really have to focus. I think with a booth, there's a little bit less commitment. If we're just doing a booth downstairs or at the library, we can kind of organize ourselves and show up, and it would generally be more straightforward. We wouldn't have to time this far ahead. So just to recap, on section B is really how many public events you want to target and how much energy you want to go to those events.
Are the public workshops the 3 down here, or are those the stakeholder listening session?
The 3 red areas are the stakeholder listening sessions. So 21st of June is the Plateau Festival. The other one is the library. That's more flexible. We could do that really any time. I talked to the ladies briefly. They seemed quite excited about having people from the library for different purposes. And then 4th of July is fixed date. It's like the Plateau Festival. The public workshop might be a little bit later, maybe a month later. You can see the public workshop on line B3. It's a little bit lighter, right? It's almost like a pink, because that's really up to you. Do you want to invest in a full-fledged public workshop?
Is the public workshop the one where you had like the different questions or like with the map and?
Yeah.
The map could be used for both, but the public workshop, we really have to have a full-fledged agenda, in my opinion, and maybe a PowerPoint presentation instead of the meeting where we just have a brochure and we talk people through it. For instance, I was looking at the small area plan. The town did have a public workshop. You can see here on page 14, there's about 10 or so stakeholders there.
Just, so would this be more of the public workshop, or are these the
This,
stakeholder listening sessions?
that would be more of the stakeholder listening session, that's a lighter touch.
Thank you.
But some of those exercises could be used for the full-fledged workshop, but we have to do much more to be better organized.
When I did the county. And when I participated as a citizen, they had small groups. And they gave you 4 things that they wanted to talk through, and so we spent a few minutes on each thing and had. A whiteboard to write down, or it is not a whiteboard, a sheet. I'd almost like to see small groups in a public workshop, but done a little bit differently, where there's a station, and each station talks about, so you're talking about land use over there, you're talking about tourism over there. And there's one person who's facilitating for that particular session. And engaging and having the opportunity for people to do some of that, interactive on paper, whatever it is, but also soliciting input and writing down the ideas. So that's kind of what I would like to see.
Very interesting idea. That's the same thing I did at the Eastern Shore in January. We had 8 stations. The theme was more like a science fair. So each community leader had a station. And let's say one was a timeline of the Eastern Shore from the 1600s until today. So people put different color sticky notes. Yellow sticky notes were agriculture and food, because Eastern Shore has a lot of agriculture. One was red was economy and transportation, the causeway, the bridge, transport. So it was really interesting. Most of the comments to see were actually from the 1600s. So it's like, wait, why are comments from the 1600s? Because most of the families came to Eastern Shore in the 1600s. So people wanted to put that memory there. And then a lot of the comments were from 1940s, World War II onwards. But this kind of really helped us to kind of understand what's the most important thing to the shore, that's the family heritage. But we also found out from that workshop that most of the people that came was a Monday afternoon. That's when our stakeholders advised them to have it, but there's mainly board supervisors, planning commission, these types of officials in the town, because most of the critical stakeholders were working, right? So it's also the timing of these meetings. That's why we should maybe think about having a variety of meetings. Monday mornings at the library would be the retirees or people that don't have the set time to go to work. And then Saturday afternoons would be families, so on and so forth. So these are just considerations. But back to this workshop, we have these maps with another station. That was a real crowd pleaser. We had a survey. What did we think about this workshop? Who do you see here? Who's missing? So we found out that the African American community, very underrepresented. The Hispanic community, very underrepresented. So we learned a lot from this first workshop, and they were kind of strategizing our approach, and we have future engagements in these ways.
That's cool. We are totally underrepresented on our African American population. What in the world? Like, we need to do that.
We can go down to the churches, the Baptist churches.
Yeah.
In Edmond and Yancey, we should have a.
It's funny that when they talk about engaging the African American population, we're talking about not in Scottsville.
Well,
It's
not one accident.
right.
So
Yeah.
focus groups is basically what I'm hearing in this way of doing different stations. This a way of doing focus group. You have different stations on different topics. In this instance, each station, the name is properly. We weren't telling people about what we're talking about. It's more of a question about where is your community? So people can draw on that. Oh, my community is food lions. I'm like, how can they go food? Or my community is a one park and go fishing in the lake.
Yeah.
Vice versa.
So-
And then you start to understand these stories.
Yeah.
And that would be a nice exercise even in this room. We
Yeah.
could have 5 stations. Each station we could have a planning commissioner, we could have a welcome by the mayor. It'd be quite a energizing experience.
Sorry, I am really interested now that we're talking about doing things like doing something at Yancey. I would like to be a more inclusive town, and how do we get people to feel safe here and welcome? and engaged.
I think those are good questions for the survey.
Well, we evidently have a community center, but I don't think we really use it for that. So creating a community center, I think is a really big one to ask about or to talk about. Just saying.
And we have
That's kind of.
other organizations such as here, they focus on the ANSI, for instance, Boys and Girls Club, I understand, that's reach out to the ANSI.
We should be doing an outreach at the Boys and Girls Club, that it is huge, because there's so many people that are stakeholders in our community, their kids are at our center 5 days a week. And I see more diversity in that population, but they're not coming to our meetings and they're not participating in town government, so I want their parents. So whether it's giving the kids something to take home with them. I see Matt shaking, thank you for being here and thank you for your head nods over there. That needs to happen, I really think that that's a good way to get more input from our community.
Seaville plans together with their outreach engagement, it's something similar.
Seaville plans together.
It's their comp plan update, and they did the same thing with their
Boys and
engagement.
Girls.
You get the parents events and then. Here's some, fruit snacks, but let's get mom over here to answer some surveys. Those are the kind of community events.
There's even things in the ball games too. Ooh, that's a good event. There's a lot, practices, there's a lot of people down there throughout the week. And then with stalkers.
Yeah, wherever that is in this process, that.
But when I went to your library last week, I was so impressed by the ball field. I looked over it. Very nice. Yeah. So maybe some of these events could be outside of the weather is soon, if not too hot to work again at the farmers market where it's a little bit shady. If the weather's going to be. So those are just considerations, but I think this science fair or public engagement focus groups around the room somewhere to really be energizer for the process rather than a dry, drawn out process that very decisive. Especially having the youth involved and senior citizens, if we can go to them if there's a coffee or some support that we can meet them. So having a broad spectrum of all people engaged, so we have more buy-in.
I want to buy this seniors place, they have their own. I always like some disco music coming from them there. I think they have a great time. Don't you go join?
He still sits outside on many a night and sings to all of us.
That's so great.
Another option is taking an oral history class next semester at UVA. So one of the add-ons to this institutional process is we're having Virginia Tech come to take oral histories, Virginia Humanities. So Virginia Humanities, is the base of UVA, they have a lot of resources.
Yeah.
So
Teaches the oral history.
this named Grace Hale is the professor, she's at UVA. But yeah, this one is,
She's like a rock star.
yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows, there might be some ways to collaborate, or some of my fellow students might by the end of the semester have the capability of doing their own oral histories, and the historical society might be interested in that. So this is the ways we can build upon this process, and you can have its own benefits in different ways. But I mean, still we have to focus on the component. That's our pathway. So yeah, those are the three different options.
We're leaning more towards the public engagement plan.
I sense that, if we focus and invest in the public engagement, maybe it could actually save time in the long run. Because public engagement can bring more people together, including the town council and planning commission. There's more buy-in, and it would actually shorten the process because everyone's on the same page. Rather than everyone's on a different page, you don't have common agreements, we don't have these areas like the parks. That's an excellent suggestion. And if we're all on different pages, it could go on the process much longer.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe when we come together, I use we throughout this process, I feel I'm invested in this too, speaking, but, I think when we come together, it's okay that, you know, maybe housing and, other potential development sites are decisive, but maybe we agree that it's always gonna be decisive, we have to kind of choose the best option, and choose the best option and move forward. I think that's maybe one way we can, put that forward through our process. We have to explain to everyone. This is maybe the best way to explain it. With community engagement. So that's what I can offer. I know these are very detailed, but I hope it painted a picture that we do have some considerations. But once we pick one, it'll be, I think, quite straightforward if we just start going about it.
Well, one of the things I'm just gonna say, because I'm a forest person versus just the trees, the forest is you. So whichever option we choose, the benefit that we have is somebody who is really focusing on this process at a unique time. I mean, this is a huge advantage that this go around has, is to have you, so. You're the forest. Which tree we choose.
Is the final.
Let's go with this one, because we have you. Gonna align with this chair.
Which one is that? Yeah, C and. Every other week.
So, and then, like I said, let's say we still need to keep going in September, October, November, I can still attend meetings, because I'm still in Charlottesville. It's just, I want to be able to do a lot of work in it. And hopefully by that time, it's really just the public hearings, and organization.
Okay.
So if we could, maybe go back to the last slide, slide 18. And maybe we could gather some consensus on the targeted completion date. If I would suggest that. I mean, the goal is to really finish up by the end of the year.
It sounded like already there was that consensus. Were you
Yeah.
following instructions?
I was.
Okay.
So C is having us get it to. Getting it to the town council around Thanksgiving.
Yes, actually, the middle of the planning commission ideally would approve it on 2nd of October. So option C, 2nd of October would be planning commission approval, and then it would go to town council. That meeting 2 weeks later. You can even talk about it at your work session next week.
We'll schedule it in. No, I'm being silly, but that's great, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So then number 2 was scope of the update. If you think it's fruitful, we can work in a Word document, and I can you know, first for a meeting coming up on 5th of June, we'll talk about confirming the union engagement process, about the survey questions in draft form. I'll even have some ideas of some of these simple exercises.
So are we between now and then to engage with the Word document? And talk about ideas for edits in a note? Or comment
Yes, very
bubbles?
broad.
Huh?
There probably is some very broad. Commentary that we can work based on.
Okay,
Did we ever identify the goals that we may have already met? We had talked about doing that.
That would be a great
This would be
opportunity for
conditions
society.
analysis.
It's like our first look at it is. This we need work on this we don't, and then we.
Yeah, so that takes place. Next week-ish, so that's A3. Who's doing that? How does that work?
Okay, so basically, maybe I would suggest A2 is later this week, I'll send out a OneDrive link. To the planning commission with all the relevant documents, and you can also. Email me or the whole group, you want to add a document. Or two, or whatever other information, let's say we add in the sewer treatment plant, the capacity, but we other utility information, so we can gather that from. The different resources, including Mr. Wallace while he's in town. And so that's the document review. And then number A3 is the existing conditions analysis. So I will go into the document, the actual top kind of Word document. And look at what needs to be updated. So maybe what I can do is highlight it in a certain color, like in yellow, for instance. And say, these definitely need to be updated, but it's gonna take me a little longer to find the updated, different demographic information. Yeah. Meanwhile, I would suggest before 5th of June, in that Word document, the planning commission can refamiliarize yourself. And you can go back to your notes and say, hey, we already talked about this section. On this goal, we decided to scrap this goal or replace with something else, or we decided to delete this paragraph for some reason. So you can kind of refresh yourself and then help me catch up to speed on what you've already done. So the idea is on 5th of June, we can talk about community engagement, we can talk about document review and existing conditions analysis. And we can kind of finalize if there's any missing documents. 5th of June would be the date. Now, let's say 5th of June, we realize we need something else from the Thomas Jefferson District Planning Commission. Yeah, I'll quickly go out and get it so we have all the information as soon as possible, basic information.
What does our agenda look like so far for June 5th?
We can include this entire. Yeah,
I'm
so
trying to remember, I feel like we have a couple of things on already, but.
I think some guidance on prioritization might be useful. Maybe I can talk with you once I can loop in with Ms. Carter. But clearly, I think there's a lot.
I think I missed an email. I saw her name, but I think I'm.
No, our interim town administrator.
Wait, we have a town administrator?
Interim. She was the Buckingham County.
Well.
Oh, we are already.
20 hours.
Okay, so we have an interim, okay, cool, awesome.
Yes, so Ms. Carter is from Buckingham County. She was the county administrator for many years. 20 years?
I think so.
Yeah. But she was working at the county level, and Buckingham County has a different profile than Scottsville has. So she, Javier and I are very much looking forward to working with her and learning.
Wow, it's very cool. How long is it interim? Did she apply?
She's not applied, it's for a couple of months, we don't know, but we're taking more applications that will. And Meredith is heading up that part of the process, the next application process.
So, Javier, I'd like your input on the different proposals and what we've said thus far between A, B, C, with your thoughts.
So more to focus on the trees rather than the forest, to take that euphemism. For the beginning for part A, that is staff collaboration with Lewis, pulling those documents, for example, the one that you just mentioned previously. I think the most engagement we can get in collaboration might be helpful. I think Lincoln is pointing towards building consensus and building a product that eventually towards the end of the year, we feel really comfortable about it getting completed, is how I would put it. In consideration, it all depends on what input we get from both of our bodies and what kind of amount of staff work. So we're really lucky having Lincoln here to contribute that degree of staff work. And yeah, I think community engagements are usually good. Seems to be what he's proposing are things that I'm seeing either in other municipalities or cities or towns being done to try to update the comp plan.
Well, and you were really big in the AC 44 process, so you have a unique inside Like
And
insight even.
for example, I appreciate his forward thinking view of trying to get more community input. Planning commission's on the right line with that. Because that makes the community members feel more engaged rather than being pulled. Put it a little bit bluntly, more that you're taking them into what our 20 years are gonna look like in Scottsville.
Okay, thank you. Can we check in with Mr. Lawless? Would you like to chime in on your thoughts? As a citizen with a lot of experience.
It's an impressive process. And it structures it really well. You've got the average plan, it manages everybody's time and resources really well. What comes to mind, Lincoln, from your experience with what to do is I think the decision rules in advance. You're already looking this through towards consensus, I think. But maybe being clear on how you're going to make some of these difficult decisions. Mr. Briscoe mentioned earlier on that most of this will be no nonsense, everybody agrees on it, hopefully warrant material updates. But there are a couple of really controversial potential issues. So thinking in advance about when you're going to try for consensus, when is majority really good enough? What do you do with people when people strongly dissent to certain parts of it? I don't know if your decisions be ready for some of those debates. If you have the rules of engagement, you have that's appreciated. So regarding rules of engagement, I can think more on that for our June 5th meeting. Again, it depends on how much time we have in the agenda, but I'm sure we can build a comprehensive plan with as much time as you want.
But that's clear, that's priority for us. Let me look through last month's minutes to refresh myself about what might be down the pipeline and then double check with that when we start developing the agenda, which is just coming up.
It's probably a really naive question, but do people tend to get? Is there a lot of contention around?
Well, I know that the town went through that.
I mean,
Through the tire plant process.
Right.
And you can imagine if people are informed, they have dissenting views, they could come in the same ways and voice the views. But again, you know, there's a lot of academics that have written about public hearings. And they basically say that public hearings don't work.
right,
How can we create something that achieves the same ideas of public hearing, and we will still have public hearings as we're required to? How can we do it in a different way, as in like the science fair, or to get people, kids, so work? Because if my 7-year-old was on the same page as me, and she brought home a flyer or something, I'd be interested, rather than someone telling me to pay attention. You know what I mean? Maybe there's different ways that we can outreach with the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah, well, and the thing about, so much engagement is that it's not solution oriented. There's just a lot of griping and a lot of saying, well, I think, but you know, it's all really good, but we need to move forward and come up with solutions together. So anything that engages people to actually think critically about our issues and help us come to solutions instead of just giving their 2 cents, that's what we need.
And I'm sorry.
That's what
I'm seeing we can also think about portion B public engagement plan. He was clear about the formats and the way you approach it really affect the kind of results and usefulness and productive use of time, put it that way, to really get everybody collected together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing that with your Eastern Shore project and what I described, what I saw at AC 44. I don't just want us saying, hey, what do you all think? That's not gonna get us anywhere except to the bar afterwards.
One typical engagement process that really makes people think is when you give them a selection of maybe 10 things
Yes.
to choose from, and you have to prioritize. Do you-
Yes,
Parks first,
thank you.
but then your other things, safety or police have to go down.
Well, and that's exactly right, because there's only a limited number of dollars, so how do you want to spend that? We only have a limited number of resources. How are we utilizing that? Everyone may have their, their project that they think is the most important, but just understand you're doing that to the detriment of something else. So here's your 10 chips. You put them where you want to around the room, whatever format it takes, but it needs to be drilled home to people that we have to make solutions. It's not just about right.
And another exercise, similar to the chip exercise, is the density exercise. Let's say, a single family village, or you can have many more shared services or public lands. You can have more dense housing. So that's another decisive point that might be, focused on the northeast 150 acres.
I would love if we could do something.
I know, and I like that. These kinds of scenarios where you don't have to say, hey, at the tire factory, what do you want to see? Or, like, let's take the specificity out of some of this and just, think about scenarios that could happen in the future, such as this, this acreage being potentially developed.
Well, and
But we don't even have to say that, but if we think about that scenario. It could look like more density and, or more density, more open space, less density, less open space, like what do people want to see?
well, and the model of. Oh geez, what was his name? The guy that was here a couple of. Yes, Chris Warren, exactly. His density model, his choice A, B, C, and wouldn't it be awesome if there was like an iPad or something where you could have like a little line where you've got your low density, you've got your high density, look, you move over to high density, look at all the sidewalks, look at all the infrastructure, look at all the open space and dog parks and playgrounds, but you go over here and you're not gonna have the sidewalks on this model. So people need to be able to see that before they're able to make a real decision. It's gotta hit home to them.
So Chris and I met up about 3 or 4 weeks ago, so he's willing to share his information. Yeah, he did these tremendous studies.
Yeah.
I mean, this density discussion is very important. We can also have an infographic that just shows this is the percentage of town that is treed. This is the percentage that's more like meadow or prairie, like the scan land. And this is the percentage that's actually built up, and you can see the very small percentage that's built up. But Mr. Wallace and I were walking around last, I think Thursday was it, around some of this wooded area. We just experienced these tremendous trails. So if you thought about the density, if you only built on the meadow or prairie area, what did that density look like? And if you wanted to preserve all of the wooded area, what would that really mean? So that's just one option out of many that grading you mentioned, but I think that's a great discussion starter. So people start to realize, gee, if I want to keep these trails and trees and streams, what does that really mean? We can't go with the by right. Or what do we need to do to move away from the by right with the existing land ordinance? Because I cited the Scanland on Thursday and how that connects with that sewer easement and just the town has such tremendous resources. Hunter County is my town, similar size to Scottsville doesn't have quite as many resources, so we really have a lot of assets. Really.
You have VDOT coming on Monday to fifth. VDOT.
That wasn't.
I would like to know to brainstorm some ways that we can better utilize the parks, like the pocket park over there. Shouldn't they, nobody uses it, right? I feel like that is very underutilized. Bruce Park?
Oh, yeah,
Certainly, yeah, that way.
So then this public workshop, maybe one station would be specifically on parks and trail network. So maybe Mr. Grisco will be there with Mr. A. And also Mr. Heisen. And then there'll be another station about prioritization. We could have a so-called game about density. And maybe Lisa, you and I could be at that station kind of facilitating. It would be a game that adults would like, but also children would like. Especially kindergartners, what we were telling you. But we could strategize about that, having about 5 stations. And that density station might be the decisive station, but it doesn't seem decisive because of the game, right? People start to understand, wow, this is really about trade-offs. Maybe I won't raise my voice in the next public hearing. Maybe I will listen a little more and still voice my views, but they're measured in a certain way because I already learned from this game. It's just hypothesizing, but in theory, that's how the communications work, right?
Okay, so what else do we need from us?
Let's see. In terms of number 4, what we talk about next meeting, we'll work on that. What day, how many days in advance do you want your information? Do you want a Wednesday, do you want a Monday meeting?
I mean, that doesn't give you a lot of time, but I find that by the time Thursday rolls around. I don't usually get to things on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so Thursday.
So maybe Thursday by noon or Thursday by 10 a.m.
Yeah. Sure.
Give yourself those extra 2 hours.
Yes, okay. That gives me a little time to send it to Javier and talk about it, and then we finalize and send out the agenda. So we send you the agenda by Thursday by noon.
Yeah, and any finer points that you need to still research and come back with, you could. But at least if we have something to start mulling over.
Okay, and then the last item on these discussion points is the next community engagement event. So I'm hearing that the Bateau Festival is important. So what I'll target is I'll try to get everything ready for our 5th of June meeting, so we can have enough comments and feedback that I can make some minor revisions hopefully. And then we can start to finalize and get everything ready for that.
Yeah.
So that will be our first stakeholder listening session. So we have a QR code for survey focusing on the out of towners, but we'll also have the other survey ready for the locals. And we'll also hopefully have a brochure. So the brochure, I'll sketch out an outline for our 5th of June meeting, and we can kind of agree if that outline is what we want, and then the brochure can be a little bit more focused discussion. I can reach out to you individually and we can kind of fill in that brochure with basic information. I can also pull from the small area plan that has a lot of more current information, background information. So it's not really recreating the wheel, it's just kind of pulling from different documents and then updating when necessary.
Just a quick comment, the Bateau Festival, at least y'all may disagree with me, but it's a bit of an anomaly. And it's an anomaly because the people who come, it's kind of like split. It's the majority of people who come aren't from Scottsville. They're people who are passing through, but they like Scottsville. So it's really good to hear these are people who come other times to Scottsville. And then there's the Scottsville people who come, which is a different set. But it's really interesting because the people who are floating through and everybody who's following the float and then you're gone or the next day, many of them really do like Scottsville because it's the best place, they say, on the float. So it has so it's an interesting angle. So I guess all I'm saying is there might be a couple subset questions you have related to that, because on the float itself, it's the one place where there's a town. So they like there's a town.
It's probably more like the survey B would be more tourism for sure. But there's plenty of locals that come out. You know, that's my one opportunity to see all my old friends in one place.
Sure.
I really wish there was more opportunity to have it done on the river. You know, we've had to pull away from that, and that makes it not as accessible to the people coming down in boats.
Oh, you mean the festival?
Mhm.
So the festival's not done by the river anymore?
As far as I understand, they're not gonna be doing that, on the really interacting. Land that they're doing Canal Basin Square. But of course, I'm not part of the events committee anymore, so.
It's going back and forth different
It's
years, yeah.
going back and forth, yeah. But I think, the first year that we did that, we got a lot of negative feedback from the people on the boats coming into town because there was no one there to greet them, so.
We actually, my family actually sponsored a dance 3 or 4 years, but it's been about 6 or 7 years, so maybe next year, not this year. Again, but it brought a whole other set of people, so yeah, there's a lot of different.
Well, I think
Currents of
there's
people.
potential, certainly.
Okay, great, so for 5th of June, we prepare. PowerPoint presentation with this information and sent to you by the day you mentioned, Thursday night. And I'll prepare the draft survey, I'll have that in a Word document, but I have to give the lots in that package. For instance, okay. Well, thank you so much for this guidance, I think we gained a lot and we have a chart the way forward.
Thank you. I know, but I'm listening to your homework and I'm going.
Well, I'm meeting with my colleagues in Eastern Shore Project tomorrow, and they're gonna be so excited to see that their materials came to some use here.
Yeah, they did.
Tell them thank you.
Good examples. They really need this for others too.
Well, you might have heard that UVA project that we did as students in one of the Virginia American Tennis Association Award.
Yeah.
So it's already an example for small community planning.
Yes.
Yeah. So. I'm gonna be going to the award ceremony for the Virginia chapter of PTA in July. In Rome.
Oh, great.
So we will have Scottsville's work beside other communities, larger communities. So it'll be some, I'll report back, of course.
I am gonna talk to, I believe Aaron Root reached out to the Baptist church and other, like the Yancey community and Hezmont community. I think it was last year or the year before about engaging with Scottsville. So I would like to know what she discovered. And then
Do you mean like joint events or?
yeah, like inclusivity in Scottsville and
Nancy's really engaged with their
they
community.
really are. We've been going out to some things there recently, like their skate night and just their community outreach and. Ed Brooks is a great resource that I think we should tap into. They engage Nancy.
The one small suggestion I'd make, towards the end of the fiscal year, I know the town's fiscal year ends on 30th of June. Some of this engagement might take a little bit of money. Some engagement processes suggest giving gift cards to people that participate, if you have a small raffle. There's positive and negative aspects, you don't want to seem like you're paying people to participate. But also, it's also a nice incentive in some ways, especially if someone attends your workshop, let's say we do a focus group for an hour, and they're a working family. It could be earning money, but instead they come talk to us, so sometimes that's to give you a good idea. So if the town did have some extra resources at the end of the fiscal year, it might be worthwhile to set aside a couple $100 for to enrich this engagement process, and that's not a good price for coffee and.
I feel like I would approach Foodland to say, do you think you could?
Or
give
features to
us
like
or
50%.
donate, some
What
gift
are,
cards.
we have like food at the events.
Well, it all depends on the budget.
Reception, where, you can come and grab like a pizza and years.
So if the town does have a little bit of extra budget towards the end of this year, that might be easy thing to get on worthwhile. So that's just one thing that the town council might want to keep in mind. That's the priority.
We, like, how would we formally request
I, I,
From town council.
I would,
There's no budget for that.
I would say. You could make a recommendation. I think as staff, you could say the planning commission. Thought it was a worthy idea, but it would have to.
Is there any restriction from a town asking for donations from area businesses? I mean, I really honestly feel like that could be a giving back kind of situation.
Or perhaps we partner with local organizations that maybe the local organizations could receive those donations.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
That's just how you do it.
For some housekeeping, I made the comp plan email. I was thinking of passing that along to Lewis. And maybe using that as a point of contact for. Not only the community, but also for planning commission, for essentially everyone with Lewis. That in continued communication with staff would be really helpful as we do staff work. Leading up to these deadlines that Lincoln has set for us. So I'll send out some information to him and get him plugged in. That's all right with you guys.
So how are we using that as?
It's Lincoln's
Is
email.
it, okay, so it's great, so he could be the central point, so we could put that on surveys and.
And then on the survey, on the brochure, so if you want to engage, if you want to participate, this and then ours.
It feels like a useful catch-all, it's, and
So
it's some,
central place.
yeah, and it's important to have, a descriptive,
and it's complan@scottsville.org, so that can also be passed along.
yeah.
5 more years.
Okay, all right, well, sounds good, thank you so much.
Excellent.
We really need to close. Yeah. Get back to the adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Oh, second for the motion.
All in favor?
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.